Now what? This? Or no, that? I'm gonna unmute here. Stephanie Jackson. Am I on? Am I on? It doesn't look like I'm on. Hello? Check. Yeah, I'm on. Stephanie Jackson, I'm promoting you so you can help us test audio.
My wife said it was good, but I felt the same way. It was good as normal.
We'll start in 30 seconds. 30 seconds. If you got any good jokes, tell them now. They look good.
They do.
I'll even leave my mic on for this. Good. 49ers.
Tonight will be good too. I think the Chiefs and the Chargers are the only real competition.
Order right now. All right, we're going to call the 2:30 workshop on housing and homelessness to order. Joy?
Director Aguilar. Director Kale. Director Espinosa. Director Faria. Director Hoag. Director McDaniel. Director Nagy.
Here?
Director Pereira. Director Pedroso. Director Serrato.
Here.
Director Silvera. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joy. On item 2, which is public comment, is there anyone from the public who wishes to be heard at this time? Okay. Takes us to item 3, which is our quarterly discussion on regional housing and homelessness. We have Mr. Checkley from the County of Merced and Ms. Dietz, the City Manager of the City of Merced, both here. Mr. Checkley.
Thank you, Director Serrato. Good afternoon, Board of Directors for the Merced County Association of Governments. John Checkley, a Deputy Director for our Human Service Agency Housing and Homeless Service Branch. This is my fifth quarterly presentation to the MCAG Board in regards to housing and homelessness. Today we have a special guest. Stephanie Dietz is going to go through some affordable housing developments in the City of Merced, and we thought it was timely to talk about affordable housing based on some of the funding resources that have become available, and give a few brief updates on some of the projects. The county was just notified. It was notified earlier, but today HCD made it public that the county is the recipient in partnership with the developer for of $10 million for a No Place Like Home project. No Place Like Home serves folks who have serious mental illness, who are homeless or at risk of homeless. We actually are strong partners with the City of Merced as well. The project is located in the City of Merced. It's not the complete package of financing, but it is a good first step in getting this project under development. We've got a couple other projects as well that I'll leave to Ms. Dietz to review that should be open here shortly, and some of these are targeted for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, specifically targeted, not just affordable housing, but actually for folks who are literally homeless at the time. Obviously, these things happen in broad partnership, and that's why we like to come to this body and provide these updates. Additionally, things like REAP and the permanent local housing allocation. The permanent local housing allocation, this is the third year and the last year that non-competitive allocations can be applied for before the October 31st deadline, before they'll revert back to the state and will be distributed outside of our community. So something that we all need to take a look at and see about how we can acquire that funding source for our community. And there's a few avenues, and of course I'm happy to help any jurisdiction that has some questions, and have talked to a couple. So a good opportunity for us to again partner and then provide some crucial services for our community. I'll give one last update on the 100-day challenge. We are participating in the governor's 100-day challenge. For this challenge, we focused on housing 100 children and youth in 100 days. Today we had our weekly meeting and we're at 92. So we're well on our way to housing 100 youth and children in 100 days. I can say for August, we housed 20 families in our housing support program. Our average over the prior 12 months was 6.6. So we're starting to see movement, and we're seeing more availability. I think the eviction moratorium lifting has been kind of a double-edged sword, because we are seeing more availability, but we're also seeing a dramatic increase in families that need housing and homeless services. So we'll continue to push in that direction. We'll continue to focus on sustainability. We'll continue to look for partners on the housing front, such as Childs and B, where we had 30 units set aside for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So unless there's any questions, I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie now, since we have got only about 30 minutes. Make sure she's got plenty of time. Thank you.
Questions for John? Okay, see you none. Ms. Dietz.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. We did talk about offering the city side of the equation to the homeless update. About 5 years ago, we collectively came together as a community and decided that we each had a special role to play. The county's role would be services, and the city's role would be building housing, and specifically affordable housing. So we set off in our each respective roles and started to get to work, and this is a good comprehensive update with John giving you the service update of his branch, And then the cities that I'm going to be speaking about, not just Merced, but also Las Banas and Atwater today, talking to you about some of the projects that are underway. I know that this isn't a comprehensive update. There are some other projects. We're trying to get our other city managers to get that to us. So in our next update, we'll focus on the other cities that you don't see before you today. So I'm going to go through quite a few projects in the city of Merced, and I want to just share that this didn't happen overnight. This started about 3 years ago, where we really identified things, projects that we felt needed to move beyond entitlement and get into construction. We're an entitlement city, so we get regular funding from HUD, and that makes it a little different for us, and we understand that. But along with that entitlement funding came the ARPA dollars. And our city council made affordable housing a priority and invested $6.5 million in a set aside to be able to match these projects. And the match is the most important thing, and I'll explain that as we get through. All right, am I working it now, or are you working it? Okay, so Childs and B was our first success story. 120 units, 119 units, mixed affordable housing project with 30 permanent supportive units set aside. This was originally a county property. The city acquired a private grant to purchase that property from the county, and then we went out and received $13.9 million in grant funding. The city matched this project with about $6 million to make this happen, in addition to low-income tax credits. So you can see the diversification of funding that went into making this $40 million project happen. With this comes an electric bus to your board as a partnership, and also all of the upgrades to infrastructure, storm drainage in an area that is chronically flooded. And Supervisor Rodrigo, or Director Rodrigo, you know that, that's your district. And so to us, this was our first project that we were successful in. This opened the door for us, showed us how to do it, and then opened the door to about 7 new projects. They're already taking listings, they're leasing this out, and we're hoping in the next 30 days that we'll be able to give tours and maybe do a quasi ribbon cutting. Kind of hard to do a ribbon cutting when you have 100 and something families living there, but we'll try to figure out the logistics of that. This is really our first success story. Moving on from there, we received 2 home key grants for a total of close to $30 million, and this is the first one for 73 South R Street. 20 studio apartments. This is that target population that John was referring to. This is for your chronically homeless, but this one is specifically for veterans. And there'll be studio units on R Street and Childs. And this is the visual rendering of what that will look like once it's completed. This must be completed by the end of the calendar year. It's a tight timeline with that grant funding. The total cost of this project is $4.6 million. The local match is $250, and the grant funds were $4.4. The next project is V Street, another project, 96 units. That was a close to $24 million grant, and this is a $25 million project, and we're matching 1.7. 96 studio apartments. This again is also targeted at those individuals experiencing homelessness, living on the streets. This is to help mitigate that. So just with those first 3 projects you've seen, we have close to 150 units designated for chronically homeless. And with our point in time count, Mr. Mayor, I think that puts us at a really good place to be able to kind of take as many people off the street as we can. Oh, too far. My apologies. Parsons. Parsons Avenue is a $71 million project. It's 108 apartments. This one is slated to be farm worker housing specific, with on-site childcare, healthcare, redirecting bus routes. And this one we will be matching over $5 million. And this is actually one that we are applying for the Supernova with. John and I talk a lot about housing grants, and so this is one of those applications that we have in. Yet to be determined if we'll be receiving the grant funding, but we'll also take affordable housing credits to make this happen as well. And that's what it is slated to look like. This is just across the street from Rancho San Miguel, in a vacant lot there by Joe Herb Park in Golden Valley. Park Avenue is the one you heard John speak about earlier. That is a partnership between us, an affordable housing developer, and the county. No Place Like Home funding. PLHA dollars are going into that. And we're matching the 10 million in grant funding that John mentioned with another 1.3 million. So in order to bring these 66 permanent supportive single units online, we're going to be blending our funding to make this one happen. Affordable housing tax credits will also be critical in this. Just a few more for the City of Merced. Link Housing, 54 one-bedroom units here. That is, and then in addition, we have Devonwood. It's another 156 units. So altogether, the City of Merced is looking at approximately 619 units to come online in the next 2 years. And that's really significant when you start looking at your RENA numbers, and those numbers are going to come to you soon. I believe the City of Merced is slated to take the majority of those affordable housing units, so we need all the help we can get to kind of cover that need in our county. Moving to the City of Las Pianas, they have their first multifamily project in quite some time. They're really excited about total of 2 structures, 16 units on just under an acre. And this is one where they've had a historical single family builder cross over to the multifamily business. That's really unique. And this is one of the first apartments they've entitled in maybe 10 years. So they're pretty excited about it. It's not affordable, it's market rate, but this is going to open the door for them to start experiencing building multifamily and then maybe attract an affordable housing partner to come into their community in the future. Although it's not labeled as affordable housing, the Quail Meadows development, which is a housing development, is seeing a new product type. And that's a cottage style unit. It's a smaller unit, which makes it kind of touch that moderate income affordability. So there's 72 units of that. That's different for Las Pianas. Las Pianas is a traditional single family 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So what we're seeing is a need to have a lower price point and build smaller in order to make that attainable. What I don't have slides for, but I can verbally share with you, is Atwater actually has 3 different affordable housing projects underway, which is really fantastic. 52 units at their Redwood development, 120 units at Chelsea, and then University Park. I'm still waiting information on that, but we were really pleased to hear that Atwater is also moving forward. So like I shared, you can't solve homelessness unless you have places for people to live, and we're part of that effort and equation in creating affordable units that are available for individuals experiencing homelessness, also looking at preventing homelessness. We have a lot of families on the verge of being homeless, and so units that are affordable will help stabilize those families. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for City Manager Dietz?
If I could make a comment.
Go ahead.
I would also ask the directors to if you have any ideas of what kind of information you would like to have presented during these workshops, either for, Mr. Checkley or Mrs. Dietz, that's always something that we're talking about. I know, John has been an excellent partner over the last 5 or 6 months in being patient as we've developed this, and I appreciated Stephanie jumping in and coordinating this among the cities. But if after hearing this and the presentations John has made over the last few months, if you have ideas or you're interested in particular information for these workshops, we're always trying to find something that is very relevant and helpful and really maximize the time that we get with you all on a quarterly basis.
I would, I kind of have a question about the homeless. We're all aware there's 3 phases of homelessness. You have financial, mental health, and addiction. Mm-hmm. And we're always talking about housing, and that always helps. I know, John, you're the one who needs to get up and talk about this. I would really like to get more information on the mental health services that need to be expanded in our city, as well as the addiction that needs to be expanded. Because most of our homeless in Atwater, it's not that they don't want to be homeless. I mean, some of them really do, and it's because of the addiction or the mental health. And that causes all kinds of issues in our community with petty crimes and all kinds of disturbances, as well as blight. I would really like to get more information on those other 2 services.
I appreciate that. And I think maybe inviting Genevieve Valentine here from Behavioral Health and Recovery Services to talk about that. There's a lot of state initiatives that most of you, I'm sure, are aware of with the Care Court, some behavioral health interim housing. About $1.5 billion was allocated for behavioral health interim housing to get those folks off the streets and start providing them services. I think the challenges are well known as by the majority of us as well, that these are voluntary services. It's very difficult to get somebody, especially on an unsheltered individual, into some voluntary services. So the interim housing is kind of an exciting aspect of that, is can we get someone stabilized? In our experience, we've really validated the value of emergency shelter to provide that stable, just a little stable platform, you know, not necessarily sobriety, but a stable platform where we can start engaging more meaningfully than if someone's on the street. So I think I can work with Stacy and invite Ms. Valentine here. It's really relevant and a great time, especially with the Care Court. That's a big initiative where, you know, members of our community are going to be able to identify and refer to the courts for them to do an assessment and then connect them with not only an advocate, but some type of housing resources as well as clinical services. So I'll take that back, Director Kale. Thank you.
And I would love to be able, in the next couple of weeks, not next week, but in the next couple of weeks, to sit down with you and anybody else to explain that to me and see what we can do to start moving these people towards becoming healthier.
I'll make that connection a little quicker then in our next meeting.
Thank you.
The care courts are potentially a sea change in the way this is addressed and looked at, because for so long the compulsory element of it wasn't there, but the care courts, I think the governor signed yesterday, and still there's a long way to go, and I think the counties kind of worked into, and there's about 2 years or so where the counties have to get these things up and running, implemented, but they involve compulsory substance abuse and mental health treatment, which it's in a lot of ways a sea change from where we've been after the LPS, so many years of the decades of the LPS conservatorships, where, you know, it's very difficult to force somebody into treatment. Yeah. So we'll see.
I have a
Mayor Hogue.
I have a comment.
Director Hogue.
It's great to see that you have some affordable housing going into your communities. Dos Palace is a little bit they have their hands tied as far as their water services go. But what I'm seeing in our community is that there are no places for anybody to rent. And the places that are for rent are so out of range as far as the rent. People that live in Dos Palace cannot afford the rent. And I know many people in our community that are on the verge of homelessness because they can't find affordable housing, and yet our community can't build affordable housing until we get our water fixed. So it's kind of a catch-22 when it comes to people in our community being able to afford rent. So it would be nice if there was some way that these people who own rental property that don't live in our community but live in other larger communities like the Bay Area, that think that rent in our community should be Bay Area pricing, have like a cap, or that they are not allowed to charge that because we can't afford that. So if there was some kind of stability as far as the pricing in the area, if your median income is $71,000, you can't afford $2,500 a month. It's just not feasible. So is there anybody addressing that as far as capping private owned homes?
So jurisdiction by jurisdiction, they are. I mean, you've seen lots of different ordinances and things adopted. Our council has taken a conversation about rent control or capping the rents. They haven't decided to move forward with it, but there are lots of examples in California I can work with Dwayne and get those over to you. Also, I know he's really excited about receiving some approval on building some construction for the water system, and we've been talking to him about, okay, once that's stabilized, can we come and work with you on housing, because we know how important that is. The Housing Authority would be an excellent partner for your city as well. They also build affordable housing, and they are an entitlement agency on behalf of the county, and so there's lots of opportunity there. And I know Supervisor Pereira has been talking about bringing a cohort or a coalition together to kind of rally around at least South Dos Palace, and then maybe more into Dos Palace to help offer stability and some planning. I know that you're a small but mighty city, and we're always happy to help and bring those resources. So,
Thank you.
but there's lots of options. That's a policy decision for your council to make and evaluate and better understand the economics of that. We can send you links to our council meetings, and you can see some of those debates happen in real time and see some of the pros and cons.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? John, could you give us a little more detail on the 100-day challenge? Again, a remarkable accomplishment so far, 92 children housed, but what specifically is that looking like? Where are they coming from? You have people housed in motels and other places and then moving into permanent?
Yeah, one of our priorities was to get folks out of motels, which we use for interim housing, and into stable permanent housing. So we are focused on the folks who are residing in the motels, primarily in the city of Merced, or we actually have a hotel as well in the city of Livingston and Atwater that we participate with. We've done outreach. We've actually gone on site, making sure we're doing the assessments. I mean, the way it looks, the methodology is to, a lot of us do work in silos. HSA has vast resources, and we're used to exercising those resources and providing services. This methodology is to engage more meaningfully with our community-based partners. So even yesterday, we were with Merced County Office of Education, and each school district has a homeless liaison that's identified. And we had our first convening to see what that looks like, right? The children, the dependent-age children that we're serving are also school-age children that the school's serving, and the school has resources through this process that we identified to pay for motel rooms for folks who are homeless, for example, or to make sure transportation's coordinated no matter where this family's staying. And interesting, the challenges between school districts as well, or even different aged children, and how the school districts come around those. So I think what we're seeing and what we hope to see post October 13th is just a new way for us to do business by including the schools in this decision-making process, by sharing information more broadly. The Housing Authority has agreed, starting on October 1st, to provide HSA 50 housing choice vouchers. Director Hogue, what you're talking about is availability and affordability crisis, and I don't use that word lightly. I typically don't use that word, but that's what it appears to be. 30% increases in fair market rents over the last several years. I think an affordability has been impacted as well as much by the eviction moratorium. There was no housing stock, so supply and demand. So we're trying to address some of those things and just elevate that through these projects, and how vitally important, when you talk about rent control, this is the mechanism, an affordable housing complex. That's where these rents are going to be tied into some kind of fair market rent, and make sure that they're affordable. What we are also finding is just because they're affordable doesn't mean there's not criteria for people to get into those affordable housing units, such as 3 times the income to rent, which a lot of our families struggle with even meeting that, or certain credit score qualifications. When we talk about some kind of rent control, I think one of the things we're seeing too, we're starting to see evictions pick up quite a bit. So August of 21, we had 55 families in interim housing. August of 22, we had 155. That tripling of numbers really started to accelerate in April when the eviction moratorium ended. I think what a lot of landlords saw too was market rate rents have increased so much that if you had a family in there at $900 and you could evict them so you could fix it up and charge $1,600, why wouldn't you do that if you're in it strictly monetarily? So there's so many competing factors. I think availability, affordability, and then this is really in understanding your water limitations, and all of our water limitations for that matter, is probably the best way to go about creating affordable housing. Market rate, you're kind of at the whims. I do believe the state has a 10% rental increase law on the books. I think it's 5% plus the consumer price index, which is, I'm sure, about 10% now. So there are some legal recourses folks can have, but landlords, business owners in general, are pretty crafty about making sure they still remain within the law and can increase their rents. New construction? Yeah. That is only for new construction, I've been informed by the housing expert. So there's a lot of pressure on prices right now. We just don't have enough stock, and that pressure will continue. Any other questions? Mr. Mayor, I mean, the participation in the 100-day challenge has been great. If we can hit 100 children and triple our output, we're thrilled to do it.
What are you seeing on the back end? You're seeing folks move out of the motels into permanent housing, but then are you seeing more coming right behind them to fill those other spots in the motels, or is it you seem to be making progress?
The inflow is exceeding our outflow, so we're getting 50 plus referrals monthly, and our biggest housing was 20. So those caseloads went from about 325 in August of 21 to over 500 today. So we aren't seeing, we're not winning yet, no.
Okay. Director Faria.
Until we can get the Bay Area to stop creating more jobs than houses, we're going to continue to fight this battle. And we've got to find some way. Probably don't have the vote. We don't have the vote or the clout here in the Valley to compete with the Bay Area power, but they know very well when they create more jobs, it makes more money for their governments. When they have to create housing, it costs more money for the services. And so they made that decision 40 years ago, and they've been continually increasing their manufacturing and their technology and all the job creation, but they have not increased their housing supply to compete to keep up. And the entire valley has had to absorb this in massive ways. I don't know if you saw the article, the video, the news report from ABC 30 in Las Vegas a few months ago, where they talked about, they call it it's a mega region from Sacramento to Fresno, and it's all affected by this huge Bay Area manufacturing, industrial technology, job creation machine. And it forces all the working people out, it forces all the poor out. Some people used to be able to afford houses over there in the poorer neighborhoods where they had lived, and they weren't well off, but they were okay. They can't even stay there anymore, and so they've moved here into the valley. And then the prices in the valley here in Los Banos, now Dos Palos, apparently, obviously you guys are seeing it too now. Imagine Gustine's probably seeing it too. And it just keeps pushing farther and farther. We're looking like the LA basin here pretty quick with the Inland Empire. So I don't know if there's anything we can do. I don't know, maybe at the state COG level, discussions with other COGs, if that's any way to get the message up there that they need to start building enough housing for their workforce. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have to pick up the pieces, and we're going to have to provide this housing for all these workers. So there, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thanks. And by the way, thank you for the excellent work. I've never seen so much progress on homeless services as I have in the last year. John, MCAG, all of us together, and everybody's working together. And then Adam Grace, I know, had a lot to do with getting some money down to us. We've all worked very hard. I'm really pleased. As you know, I'm not running again, so I won't be around, but a whole lot longer. So it's good. It's a very good feeling that we had something. We were part of this great success, and we want to continue on. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, we're going to miss you. We'll miss your time on your soapbox as well.
Thanks, Matt.
Director Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think we all know that, like say, Stephen said, every jurisdiction, which is every city council or the county, is able to set limits. The problem is there's a lot of businesses, a lot of constituents wanting it to, but there's more pushback from the businesses or developers that want to build, keep the homes, buy the homes, and so when it gets to getting a majority on any city council, it's hard, and because, like I said, it's just a pushback from people or business wanting to be able to set their own prices on rentals, and I think we all know that. So I think most cities tend to not to discuss it as much, or there's discussion, but there's just not, it's not placed on the agenda and doesn't move forward. So that's what's uncomfortable for any council member or mayor to say. But so, I think there's have to be enough outcry. I don't know if we've reached that. We probably reached it, but not. There's no, the masses are not in your local city council yet to push you to, approve a ordinance where it'll set rental limits in your community. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments, short speeches? Anybody? No? Okay. All right. I guess we'll transition to the 3 o'clock regular meeting. Anybody need a break or good to go? Okay, transition to that. Thank you both. We'll call it to order. And Joy, if you could do the roll call, please.
Director Aguilar? Director Kale?
Here.
Director Espinosa? Present. Director Faria?
Here.
Director Hoag? Here. Director McDaniel? Director Nagy?
Here.
Director Pereira? Director Pedroso?
He's coming. He'll be here. He's just getting.
Director Serrato?
Here.
Director Silvera?
Pedroso's here. Pedroso's here.
Thank you, so noted. And we do have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. On to the, is there anybody who'd like to lead invocation? I don't see anybody here, I don't think. Okay, so we'll move on to the pledge. Director Nagy, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Pat. On to item 5, which is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion with regards to agenda item 5?
Move to approve.
Okay. Motion from Director Kale, second from Director Nagy. Do we need a roll call vote? Okay.
Yes.
Joy.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director Hoag?
Yes. Ooh, I guess I turned.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Aye.
And we do have a quorum, and the motion carries unanimously.
Yes,
Did you ask Director Espinosa?
My apologies. Director Espinosa?
It's moot now. You got the.
Thank you. And motion carries unanimously.
He wants to get in on it too. Enjoy. All right, on to agenda item 6, which is public comment. Anyone from the public wish to be heard?
Mr. Chair, if I could make an announcement while staff's coming up, I just want to ask for or offer a reminder to our directors and to anyone at the podium to please make sure you're speaking into your microphone so that we can have quality recording and also as active participation with our virtual participants as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacey.
Can you hear me? Yes. Good afternoon. I'm happy to announce that we have a new staff analyst, and it's Tara Rodriguez. And so she's joining us from the County of Merced most recently, and we're happy to have her. She's going to be working on some of the data from the bus and YARTS, and so we're happy to have her on board. I just wanted to have her come and say hi and experience the
Tara.
morning. So you can say hi if you'd like her.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara.
Welcome. Thanks for coming. Okay. On to agenda item 7, which is the Caltrans report. I think we have Marlon here. All right. Welcome, Marlon.
Knock, knock. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board members, Madam Director. Just want to give a brief Caltrans update for the board. Not sure if this was mentioned previously, but we First thing I would like to mention is our maintenance deputy district director, Mauricio Serrano, has moved on, has moved on to another office, and we will be looking for a replacement for Mr. Serrano, and when that is announced, we will be sure to convey that to the board as well. But I do want to mention some general items for the board as well. First of all, Caltrans has completed the first Clean California funded project in the state. This is actually up north in Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge. It was a $75,000 project for recreational facilities. But I just wanted to say, in regards to that, we are moving forward with our Clean California Local Grants Program, and we still are very excited about the city's park that is being renewed, so to speak, and we're looking forward to any coordination possible. We are expecting a second round of Clean California Local Grant Program funding to be announced, and so when that is announced, we will definitely pass that to the board as well. We are also continuing to look at other state and federal funds that are coming out for opportunities for our local partners. One of those being the Strategic Growth Council, Regional Climate Collaboratives Grant Opportunity. This is obviously from the Strategic Growth Council, but it is to drive and sustain climate action and strengthen local coordination, leadership, knowledge, skills, and expertise for funding resources, project planning, and implementation. So this program, the Regional Climate Collaboratives Grant Program, applications are due October 7th. If you'd like more information on this program, I'll be happy to share that as well. Please do get in contact with myself. We are also doing a last call for letters of support for the Reconnecting Communities program, which is a federal program as well. I think we mentioned that at last board meeting. But also we are tracking the State Active Transportation Program. There is an augmentation that is happening. So there's a couple $100 million being added to that program for Cycle 6. It's not going to be a separate call. It's going to fund more of the projects in Cycle 6. So we're looking forward to that and seeing more projects get funded. We are also looking at augmented funds for our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program, specifically the Adaptation Planning Grant Program. And that is really to address climate change needs, climate change stressors. So we're going to have a workshop on that coming up in the fall, and we will pass that information along to the board if you guys are interested in attending, as well as our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. We'll also have a workshop for that. So be on the lookout for more information. Last thing I want to mention for the board today is just some local improvements, and specifically the Route 59 Girard intersection improvement project. We do expect there to be right-of-way, we are looking at different alternatives for that intersection, one of them being a roundabout alternative. We hope to have more workshops and also work with the board and the community as well if there's any project updates that are needed. So especially Supervisor Espinosa, if you like a project update or any of the board members, please do reach out. We do anticipate still the construction being completed spring 2025. That concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions, any thoughts, and thanks for the time.
Questions from all? Director Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How you doing, Marlon? Thank you for the update on Girard. I know that I've probably commented that a signalization would probably be better there because I know the traffic is very fast, and I don't know if you would have I don't know, even though it slows down traffic, a roundabout, but I don't know if it's the best. But I know you guys you guys do your studies, and if it's the best for that one. On the other hand, in Planada, I had a MAC meeting last night, and they were pretty upset that Caltrans had a display of the roundabout, and more, it's more of a push since for 4 years the community's been wanting a signalization, and Caltrans, all it does is push the roundabout, which I understand is safety, but it's just what the community wants is the signalization there. I just got to stress that since I was shouted at last night. So, and so like I said, 4 years ago we had a meeting in Stockton. We went up there before the stops were replaced, so seeking a signalization. So they've been wanting that for forever. So, Livingston southbound off ramp. Excuse me here. Let me turn this off. Livingston southbound off ramp. There's a fire there in the corner. As you right before the stop sign on the right side, there's a lot of debris that has burnt there, and they haven't cleaned it up. So we appreciate if we can try to get that clean, because it looks pretty ugly there with McDonald's and all the. Plus there's a erosion there. I think I don't know if it was from the water or from before, but there's a sign there, and it has been almost. I don't know if it's fallen or if you guys put some the dirt back on there, but there was some erosion there. I was going to take pictures, but I wasn't able to go ahead and do it before the meeting.
I'm sorry, Director. What is the 99 and what's the off ramp?
The Winter Parkway off ramp, southbound into Livingston. Yeah, southbound. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Also, too, if I could get an email back in response to my comment on, you guys take good care of all the roads, the state highways, but yet when it comes to the city of Merced and to city limits all the way to Highway 99, the road is very bad.
59 or 99?
55, Highway 59 all the way to Highway 99. Because I think that's your area is all the way to 99. I know on the other side it's city, but in front of the fairgrounds is very bad. And also San Nella, I took a tour over there, even though I haven't taken over yet. I was going to comment to Supervisor Silvera as well. The last crossing going northbound before you leave the truck stops, the last crossing, there's a big pothole there that needs to be probably covered if possible, because I know that the trucks turn there and it's very bad there too. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I think we can just go around. Director Hogue, anything from you? Okay. On my right, Director Kale, Director Nagy. Director Nagy.
Hi, Marlon. Good to see you again. A couple of my constituents brought to my attention, they got letters from Caltrans. They're along the 140, or what we call South Avenue, when it's in town, saying that they will be out to resurvey their property and give them a bid on their property. Is there something going on where we're widening 140 or widening sidewalks, or have you heard of anything?
I know there's a project on 140 that may be related to that, but I'll follow up.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, Director Pedroza, Director Free, anything from you two?
I'm good.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, Stacy.
Sorry, Marlon. I know I got your email today on the Girard and 59 project. I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I did want to ask if there is an interest of our board to have an update on the project at a future meeting. Is there a specific timeline you're working with, or where you are in the process? Is it too late to wait till October? Is it something we can distribute in writing?
No, anything the board wants, we're happy to.
Okay. We'll be in touch then. Thank you.
Just for me, Marlon, occasionally I'll receive complaints about inadequate, or sometimes, people might miss it, but or non-existent signage on Highway 99. Right now, with all the construction coming, where people come into Merced and end up having to bypass the entire city. So just with all the construction going on. So I think someone told me the other day that it might have changed a little bit, where some of the prior exits or the prior avenues back and to get off the freeway weren't there. So if you're nodding your head like you understand.
I've heard from others, and we'll reiterate that to our construction team.
Okay, appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
I guess that's it. Yeah, with you, it's what everybody else does to us all day. Then it's always we turn around and do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a role. It's kind of fun for us. I think we get to do a little role reversal, but we understand. We appreciate your work.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And good seeing all the yellow Clean California bags out too. I've seen a lot of those, so it means a lot of work's getting done. So.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you, Board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. All right, on to item 8, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee report. Mr. Villarreal.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm going to start with a little story. A couple of guys are out hunting one afternoon. They're out in the woods, and one guy says to the other guy, "Hey, something in the tree," and shoots it. Well, they go and pick it up, and they're sitting around the campfire rotisserie this bird that they shot, and a couple of rangers walk up on them. Says, "Hey guys, what are you doing?" "Oh, we're having our dinner." "What did you shoot?" "Oh, we don't know, but the feathers and part of the carcass and the head's over there." So one of the rangers walks over and looks at it, turns right back around, pulls his handcuffs and says, "You're under arrest." "What for?" "Well, you guys shot an American eagle." "What? What are you talking about?" "Yeah, an eagle. Let's go." Took them into town in front of the judge, and they're standing there, and the judge says, "Do you guys know what the symbolism of the eagle is?" "Well, not really, Judge." Well, he went into the whole spiel about American symbol and so on and so on and so on, and the guy says, "No, sir, we didn't know that." "Well, even if you didn't know it, here's what you're going to get: 5 years in prison and about $10,000 fine each of you. You got anything to say?" "No, sir." And they start to walk away, and the judge says, "By the way, what did that eagle taste like?" And one guy turns around and says, "Well, Judge, somewhere between a falcon and a red-tailed hawk." They're all endangered. Anyway, moving on.
Took me a second.
The advisory committee. The highlight points of the meeting was number 1, transportation planning, Measure B, monthly update. The committee discussed the active transportation plan, previously titled Regional Non-Motorized Plan. Secondly, Regional Housing Plan Update. Natalia Austin presented information on the regional housing needs allocation, on what Mr. Faria was alluding to. The comments discussed certain housing demands and state requirements that are needed for state-funded allocations. Thirdly, the committee also discussed the importance of submitting support letters for future projects. Thirdly, there was discussion on agricultural land preservation, as well as a concern that the Transportation Planning Agency is being required to address housing needs. And last, you met transportation needs, FY 2023 and 2024. The committee discussed ongoing public outreach and the methods used to conduct the outreach. Other points of interest: introduction of senior planner Meg Prince and staff services analyst Tara Rodriguez. And lastly, Mary Michael Rawlings reminded the committee that the next Citizen Advisory Committee will be held on Highway 59 at the landfill in Merced. Thank you all for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Villarreal. Appreciate your work. Any questions for Paul? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to agenda item 9, which is the informational items. These items are included for informational purposes. No presentation will be made by staff unless board members have questions. Any questions, requests to pull anything for discussion or information? Okay. Seeing none, do we need any action on? Takes us to the consent calendar, agenda item 10. Is there any request to pull any of the consent items for separate consideration or discussion, or else is there a motion with regards to the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Motion from Director Espinosa. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Second from Director Nagy. Joy?
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza? Yes. Director Faria?
Yes.
Director Hoag? Yes. Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Serrato?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Takes us to agenda item 11, which are our MCAG action items. And 11A is our recommended adoption of the RENA methodology, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And Natalia Austin is here to speak on that item. Natalia.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. So as you know, for the past several months, we've been talking a lot about the Regional Housing Needs Allocation process. We've been working with a group of stakeholders, and we have received public input to develop a methodology for distributing the region's housing need. And so we're approaching the final steps in this entire process, but before we consider this item for adoption, I'd like to introduce Alex Steinberger. He's a managing partner at Cascadia Partners, to just briefly discuss where we are in the RENA process, the main components of the recommended methodology option, and also our next steps. So without further ado, I'll introduce Alex.
Thank you.
Natalia, and good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Alex Steinberger. I'm a managing partner of Cascadia Partners, and we were the consultants working with MCAG on the regional housing needs allocation process. Next slide. So a little overview of where we are today. We started back at the end of last year with a regional determination of housing need from the Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. They provided the region with a need of 22,620 units that needed to be divvied up among jurisdictions, which then translates into how many housing units they need to plan for in their housing elements. We've gone through a really robust engagement process that included a committee of jurisdictional stakeholders and stakeholders from other interests in the region, as well as the general public. And we landed on a methodology to divvy up that regional housing need that just yesterday, I'm happy to report, was approved by HCD. So it checks all the boxes that the state needs it to check, but it was also unanimously supported by our RENA steering committee. So we feel very, very good about that methodology. Tomorrow, we will be releasing the draft RENA plan, which details the methodology and how it allocates housing to all the region's jurisdictions. And once that's been approved later this fall, it will allow jurisdictions to start on their housing elements, which are due early 2024. Next slide. So here's a little more detail on the project schedule. We started this back in January. Moved pretty quickly to make sure that jurisdictions would have the guidance they need to move forward with their housing elements. From here, we'll be moving into an appeals period on the draft RENA plan, where jurisdictions can appeal their allocations should their circumstances have changed between when the methodology was developed and now. And then we'll be coming back to you in November, in all likelihood, to ask you to adopt the final RENA plan for the Merced region. Next slide. So how did we get to the adopted methodology that we're hoping you will adopt today? We started with a proposed RENA methodology memorandum that was released back in June. We came to you in July after having that out for public review and presented it to you in a public hearing. Then the draft was updated with any comments received and sent to HCD for approval. As I said, we received full approval from HCD yesterday, and we're hoping that we can adopt that methodology here today with you. Next slide. So a little bit of background on the RENA methodology. I know you may have seen some of this, but I'll just provide it as a refresher. The RENA methodology was developed in 3 steps. The first is to allocate a baseline housing need to all of the jurisdictions, and we did this based on the housing that was allocated in your last cycle regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. This provides some consistency with that important plan for your region. In the second step, we apply a bunch of adjustment factors that take into account local conditions, and we use that to allocate total housing to each jurisdiction. And then we apply additional adjustment factors in step 3 to split up the amount of below moderate and above moderate housing need that each jurisdiction receives. Next slide. So we presented the RENA steering committee with 6 methodology options that they helped us create. And each of those methodology options is intended to further 5 RENA objectives, which you see there under the objective column. We use different adjustment factors, which you see in the middle of the table, to further those 5 objectives. And ultimately, the steering committee unanimously recommended a methodology that uses existing transit access, access to opportunity, jobs housing balance, percent of households in poverty, and the amount of high quality agricultural land in each jurisdiction's SOI as a way to divide up housing need across the region. Next slide. We also looked at a bunch of other factors when comparing the 6 options. One of those factors was whether we thought it would comply with what the state wants to see. So that's, does it further those 5 statutory objectives? We also wanted to know if it aligned well with the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. We also released a survey to the public as part of the RTP SCS process, where we asked a series of questions about where people thought housing growth should happen in the region. And finally, a very important issue for the region, we also looked at where providing water service would be more or less difficult, and used that to judge how well each option met those criteria. And so based on that, you can see that the option that was selected, methodology option 1C, it's not the best at everything, but it's at least very good in every single one of those categories. And that's ultimately why it was selected by the RENA steering committee. Next slide. So this is a breakdown of that methodology. This is what it all amounts to, is this table. We do a bunch of work just to get all these numbers in this table. But basically what it says is the number of housing units at various income levels that jurisdictions need to plan for in their housing elements over the next 8 years. And this option was, as I mentioned, unanimously recommended by the RENA steering committee. And as of yesterday, the methods that were used to allocate the regional housing need were found by HCD to be in compliance with state statute. So we are feeling very good about this methodology. We have good buy-in locally, and the state likes it as well. So no small feat to get to this point, but we're happy to say that we've arrived and are ready for you to consider adopting this methodology. Next slide. So where do we go from here? We're hoping today that, again, you adopt the recommended methodology. And then, assuming that that occurs, tomorrow we will be releasing a draft RENA plan, which kicks off the jurisdictional appeals period for the RENA process. So as I mentioned, the draft RENA plan summarizes the methodology, shows how those numbers in the table we were just looking at were allocated, and provides jurisdictions with 45 days to appeal those allocations if their circumstances have drastically changed since we last spoke with them. That jurisdictional appeals period is going to end at the end of October, and any comments that we receive during that jurisdictional appeals period could extend the process a little bit, but barring any comments received, we will come back to you at the November governing board meeting to recommend adoption of the RENA plan, which concludes the RENA process and allows jurisdictions to use those numbers with certainty as they begin their housing element updates. Next slide. That's all I have for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will pass it back to Natalia.
Thank you, Alex. We appreciate the presentation. Any questions for Alex and or Natalia? Okay. Director Freya, you have your hand up?
Yes. So when the RETA comes back, then, and it's adopted, what in the area of carrots and sticks does the state have to enforce these numbers?
So in terms of enforcing actual housing production, the construction of housing, very little. What is required of jurisdictions is that they plan for these units, which means they need to have adequate zoned capacity at specific densities to accommodate the amount of housing. Obviously, we can't dictate what the market actually does. Developers operate on their own in a free market, but HCD wants to make sure that zoning is not a barrier to achieving those housing numbers.
Okay, thank you. Well explained. I appreciate it.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Go ahead, Stacey.
I would be remiss to not just take a moment to thank our staff and our consultants with Cascadia. I think this is the second or third time you've seen this team present, and this is a very complicated issue with big ramifications, and they've been an excellent team to work with. I think your staff would agree that they have just been just rock solid for us in both navigating a tight timeline, difficult, this is anytime you're talking about housing in our current environment, it's always a bit challenging, and I just can't say enough for how great Alex and Paul and Rachel and of course Natalia and our team have done to get us to this process on time and with the kind of jurisdictional local staff support that we've had. So I just want to, for the record, say thank you to you all.
All right. Do you have something, April? Okay. Joy, anybody from the public, either online or out in the audience? All right, bringing it back to us for discussion and or action. I think the recommendation is option 1C. It's the decision before us whether or not to go with that. All right, any discussion or a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Director Hogue and Director Espinosa.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinosa? Yes. Director Faria?
Yes.
Director Hogue? Yes. Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
And motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Alex. All right, item 11B, this is the recommended COVID relief regional surface transportation program funding local transportation fund swap. All right, Nav is in the audience saying Elizabeth is on her own on this one, so.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. I heard it kick on. Good afternoon, board. This item is regarding some of the COVID relief fund. We call this CRISA money from Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. So through that, the CRISA fund, about 1.2 million, a little bit over 1.2 million, came to be allocated in the Merced County region. So this starts as federal money. It flows through the California Transportation Commission. When you have a project, you'll get it approved by the commission and go through kind of the pretty complicated steps to receive the 1.2 million. So what staff is proposing is that instead of taking this this funding and give the CRISA funding to our agencies, that the TJPA do a bus purchase, single project to go to the Transportation Commission to allocate these funds, and that the same amount, the $1,234,325, be transferred from the transit agency to all of the jurisdictions in LTF. The local transportation fund is state money. It's much easier for your jurisdictions to handle. So we're proposing just handling it that way. It ends up being a swap, as we're calling it, of where TJPA will handle this new federal money and turn over LTF to your agencies. The proposal for the swap has a allocation table on page 116 based off of the standard practice of allocating by population. So you can see those numbers there on 116. So the action item today would be to approve the CRISA funding to TJPA if that's the board's wish, and approve the swap if the board wishes. So that's the recommendation from staff. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, any input from the public? No? Enjoy anybody from the public wish, anybody online? All right. I guess back to us for discussion. Pat?
Yes, thank you. I didn't have any questions for you, Elizabeth, but my question has to do with the distribution, to be it further resolved at the bottom. The standard practice of just doing it by population, where most other things now, like Measure V and so forth, are using a formula, not just population. I took the liberty of working up some numbers of if we took, for instance, 10% of that money and divided it by the 7 jurisdictions, that would be a base rate of $17,633 per jurisdiction. And then that would help the smaller cities like Dos Palos, and it would help everybody except Merced and Merced County. And to make it more equitable rather than just population. That's what we do with Measure V and some of the other stuff. So I brought some extras if you want to pass them down. So for today's vote, I would just like to approve it without the very last sentence, the very last paragraph of the resolution, which it says, "Be it further resolved," that once it's done, that'll be dispersed in a specific, until we have a chance to come back and talk about it, maybe with the full board, and get everybody's input on how to disperse the funds. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Do you want me to address that procedurally?
Sure.
I'm going to attempt this, and then I'm going to look to Elizabeth to correct me. But as I understand it, the action that we are most importantly seeking today is the approval of the swap so that we can pursue through the CTC process the use of the CRISA funds for the Transit Authority. And also in concept then would be recognizing that when that swap would occur and the CTC action would happen in December, approving the use of CRISA for the transit project, that there would be a distribution of the equal amount of LTF to the jurisdictions. So the remaining point of clarification then would be to determine at a future time what that distribution formula would be. I don't know if that made it worse or better, but it did in my head. Do you see any hiccup there, Elizabeth, in terms of process or NAV? I'm looking, or Christine with, no?
I mean, on that point, that is the action that we need first, is to move forward with the CTC process. I think just from the general, input that I'm hearing, it would be advantageous to have the TGPA take over the CRISA kind of allocation process. So the rest can be worked out later if that's the wish.
All right. So Director Nagy's proposal to work it out later, that doesn't cause you any headache at all?
Not with allocating these funds.
All right. Okay. Any other comments on that? Questions, thoughts? Director Faria.
Support Director Nagy's recommendation that we just be it resolved that we do the swap and not include the distribution at this time.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any comments or a motion?
I would, excuse me, I would move to approve the resolution without the distribution on it.
I ask one point of clarification?
Yes, Stacy.
May I ask for direction on how you would like to proceed in the future, maybe after the vote, how you would like to proceed with the discussion on the distribution formula? If you would like us to take that to the TRB next month, if you would like to have it come back to the board here first next month, just any clarification?
Both would be good.
Okay, so we'll start with the TRB next month. Okay, and do we have your permission to start here with this document? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Joy, the vote.
Director.
Director Pedroza.
Yeah. So we're going to come back and discuss this again, correct?
Yeah, I think our understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it's going to go through the TRB. The TRB is going to discuss different options, then bring options to us, and then we'll discuss and make it. No decisions are being made on the allocation at this point. So
Okay.
we'll wait till we have the full board.
And I apologize, I'm not there, but Pat, I know you said you handed something out. Can you make sure that I get a copy of that too, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Joy, the vote.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinosa?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director Hoag?
Yes.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroza?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Joy. Takes us. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Noah, for all your work on that, too. Takes us to discussion item 12, which is the unmet transit needs, fiscal year 2023-24. Mauricio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, board members. MCAG is preparing to begin the annual unmet transit needs process, which is required to conclude prior to the apportionment of the region's TDA funds for 2023 and 24. We are going to go out and solicit comments. We have various options this year. We have a survey online. You can do by mail, by email. We are actually going to visit the west side, so we will be out in Dos Palos doing one of our hearings. We'll have 2 hearings in Dos Palos, 2 in Merced, and 1 virtual. As the TDA administrator, MCAG is responsible for performing the annual unmet transit needs process to ensure that all unmet transit needs that are determined to be reasonable to meet are addressed before any TDA funds are expended for non-transit use. So kind of like the item that was being discussed before. But we are starting that process. There are some flyers included in the package. And they start on October 25th is when we're in Merced. October 26th is when we're online, and the 27th will be in Dos Palos. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Josh, Tom, no questions from you either? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, items 13, 14, and 15 have nothing on them. Takes us to agenda item 16, which is everybody's favorite topic, SB 1383. Kyle, for the SB 1383 organic waste process or transfer request for proposals. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, quick update today. We are in negotiations with the proposers. We've had negotiations this week. About a week and a half, they will be, thank you. They will be coming out to do a site visit to take a final look so they can put together their final and detailed plan of what the site will look like to provide for us. And then we will be bringing a proposal to the evaluation team and then to the TRB. We believe in October and or November, excuse me. And then we'll be bringing the plan, whichever one we choose, we'll bring that to the city councils. I'll bring that to the county board, city of Merced,
and the city of Atwater. And if any other city would like to see those plans, we'll be happy to bring those to you. But this facility will be for those who will be accessing Highway 59. That all should be done by the end of this year, and then we'll be bringing the final contract to this board we believe in February of 2023. We were asked to follow up with the Little Hoover Commission. I've been following those videos and sitting in on those. There's one next Thursday, a roundtable they'll be hosting. It looks to seem they are not going to be recommending to get rid of 1383. It will be around. There probably will be some recommendations to make some tweaks to it, some adjustments to it, to make it a little easier for the smaller counties like Merced, smaller jurisdictions to prepare and get ready for it, and a few other small things, environmental questions that have been asked of the commission. Other than that, I think that's it for my update for this time. We do look forward to seeing you folks out at Highway 59 in October. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions for Kyle? Anybody? Okay, seeing nothing from Josh and Tom either. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. All right, next is agenda item 17, which is the much anticipated executive director's report.
So I guess you'll be very excited that I have several updates for you, but I think they're quick. Just as a reminder, I did provide this reminder at the TRB meeting yesterday that the comments on the draft JPA are due, I think Monday's the 19th, if I'm not mistaken, but it is the 19th. But I did communicate that to staff, as well as a reminder that any comments that are submitted do need to be sent to council and not myself. Next week, Director Kale, Director McDaniel, Elizabeth, and I, actually on Sunday, or sooner, will be flying out to Washington, D.C. To participate in the Valley Voice program, which is our valley-wide One Voice, essentially, focusing on important transportation and air quality issues. As Kyle mentioned, in October, we've been celebrating RWA's 50th anniversary all year, but October is the month. So all of our meetings, our CAC, TRB, and this board meeting in October will be held out at the Highway 59 landfill. Some of you have been on the board long enough to have had board meetings out there. Some it might be your first time having a board meeting out there, but we are gauging interest. Mary Michael has been checking in with TRB members and CAC members, and if she hasn't contacted you, we will, to see if there's an interest in a tour of the facility. If you have not done a tour of our 59 facility, it's a really interesting opportunity to just see, it's a well-oiled machine out there. So I would encourage you, if you could, to do that. Also at that meeting, if you recall, I think it's been about a year now that we lost a colleague, Jerry Lowry, who passed away. He was a longtime employee, 20 years plus. I probably am really shortening that. It's probably well over 30 years. Okay, so 30 years. We'll be doing a bench dedication for him out at the trees there just before the board meeting. So you'll be getting an invitation to participate in that. And then in November 17th, which is our governing board meeting date, we are on track to have our grand opening for our new transit office that is next door to our MCAG office. If you haven't driven by lately, you will be surprised to see we have our new facade up, or at least the windows are up on one side. It's starting to look and feel like a real office. I think we've even ordered our signage to go up on the building, and we just recently picked a paint color, or we have swatches on my desk. So really exciting about that, really excited. So you'll be hearing more from our team on the details there. And one thing I want to kind of put a pin in for right now, but it'll probably take place in January or February. This board has had previous discussions over the summer about being more involved with policy and kind of developing a voice for the region around some of the key policy issues. I will be bringing, Elizabeth and I in particular, will be bringing more information towards the end of the year to really recognize and take a moment to acknowledge the shift that has happened at the state on how transportation, what types of transportation projects are being delivered with state funding and even to some extent federal funding. We've talked a lot about the CAPTI policy, SB 743, which is VMT mitigation. And as the state has been rolling out new tools to measure CAPTI compliance for projects, I really think we're in an important place where before we start our next round of Measure V projects, before we really even start new projects, that we take a moment to say, okay, let's look at this new lens through which our projects are going to be measured. What types of projects can we deliver? Which types of projects can be funded, so that we're being efficient and effective with our taxpayer dollars. So we'll be putting and this is happening up and down the valley, but I think target January, once we have, we kind of come back from the holiday schedule, and maybe February, but be looking for that. That will be an important workshop, and I would encourage it to be both, not just the board, but the TRB and any of your public works staff or planning staff that would be relevant. So another thing that we're working on. And then lastly, I'll just say we have community cleanup events in Winton and Los Banos tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Saturday. Sorry, I've been off all week. Saturday, and as well as an HHW event out in Los Banos at the fairgrounds on Saturday. And then my last plea is to just remember to not throw away your batteries, including any kind of a device, a cell phone, a kid's little toy car, anything that will have batteries in it. We have had a pretty wicked fire season out at Billy Wright in particular. Largely what we suspect is due to irresponsible battery disposal. And that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Stacey. Takes us to agenda item 18, which is the director's reports. Starting on my left, Director Espinosa.
I had my mic on. I was going to ask a question for Stacey regarding the disposal. I was asked by the LeGrand MAC if it's possible to have a fall and spring cleanup, one in LeGrand, whether either, and one in Planara, so that way they can go to each other once. Sometimes they, if you have two like in one community, then they're able to go to the Planara in case on either one. So if it's planned that way, it's probably better for both communities.
To do them jointly, to have them open for both residents. I'm gonna let Kyle talk
Sure.
about that.
Hey, Director. All the community cleanups are set up by the communities themselves. So the city sets up theirs and the county sets up theirs. It'd be set up by your streets division. They set those up and they work through us to set up tire and mattress collection. But the actual scheduling and setting up is done by your staff.
I'll bring it up to our public works department then.
Right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Cal.
Someone over there too.
Yeah, he's doing good.
So good.
All right. Rodrigo, your report?
No, thank you. I think coming a lot. Right. Thank you.
April.
Thank you. 3 weeks ago, I was invited to a state outreach for the $100 billion infrastructure regional project discussion, along with Chair Serrato and Supervisor Pereira. We were all there. Along with several people from Fresno County, Stanislaus County. It was interesting to hear what they were going to do with $100 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars in infrastructure money, and what kind of regional projects that they were looking for. And there were quite a few suggestions for things, but I did bring up that I thought it would be a good idea if the smaller jurisdictions like Dos Palos and Gustine and Orange Cove and Lemon Cove and all of those little towns that don't get a lot of the $100 billion worth of money, put together some kind of a regional plan for themselves, to work together for streets, for underground piping, for sewer, for anything like that those towns don't receive a lot of funding and have antiquated equipment, such as sewer and water and drinking water. And I think that it was well received, don't you think? They kind of sounded like they were interested. So we'll see. The little people, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So all we have to do is make a lot of noise, and hopefully they will listen. So that was all that I have, but thank you everyone for coming today, and there you go. That's all I got.
Thank you. On my right, Director Kale.
I'm good. I have nothing. I know, it's a surprise.
Director Nate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, sir.
In regard to that SB 1383, I was reading that there's another bill, and I believe it was SB 1681, that's going to add, it's just being proposed, that will add some relief to jurisdictions as far as having to haul back their organics, their mulch and so forth, that will give us more time to figure out how to do that and so forth. So that there's some bills being talked about that to help us in our quest to comply with 1383.
Stand correctly, I did hear about this at a conference I was at recently. They're going to slow down the requirement for it. You will have to get to that point. They just won't. They will give you a percentage. You'll start with 30% and build up to the 100% requirement. So right now you're required a large amount of purchasing of compost and wood chips and those things for your city. They're going to give you a smaller amount to start with if that gets signed and put into place.
Yeah.
So.
That'll be a help.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Also, Chairman and I attended the League of Cities conference down in Long Beach, and one of the vendors there does recycling, where their program is that they will come to your city, or if you have to allow them, but they will pick up the recyclable items from your citizens and actually pay the citizens for the recyclables. So it was kind of an interesting concept, I thought, and something else to look at. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Supervisor Josh Pedroza.
Thank you very much. I apologize for not being there. I'm at the RCRC conference or annual meeting right now. And so I apologize for missing the workshop. But the one thing, a couple things I wanted to mention really quickly, for Valley Voice, isn't former Congressman Jeff Denham, I think, is going to be out there also kind of advocating for transportation issues, is what I heard, which I think would be really great for us in the Valley. And that speaks to kind of what April was saying, and her comments about, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because here at this conference we were talking about broadband, and that's been a big focus on this conference. And I was talking to another county, and they said, "Oh, we've heard about you guys. We already know what you guys are doing, what you're working on, because we've really made a push." And so I think what you're saying is 100% accurate, and that's something that we really have to do. So I really appreciate those comments. And if we have that mindset, it's going to go very far. Finally, just having being on a Zoom and watching my face for the last hour, I realized that I have a better face for radio than I do for the screen. But at least I'm better looking than our chairman.
Josh, thank you. I miss you. No one else, I think, has said that, or probably will say that, but at least I, for one, miss having you here, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to clarify that Supervisor Pedroza knows that Lloyd Pereira is not our chairman anymore.
Josh was he chaired a dinner that the Hispanic Chamber put on called the Mayor's Ball, and Josh was one of the chairs. We actually raised $27,500 for local charities. And Josh, I forget who said it, but someone described Josh's face as being that of a curmudgeon. So I think actually that was me who said that. But it's now he's finally seeing it. He's realizing it for sure. All right, Tom.
I don't have anything to report today. Thank you very much.
Okay, I guess that leaves me. To April's point too, I had the honor of attending the event with former LA Mayor Villaraigosa, who's the governor's sort of infrastructure czar now in Fresno. And the big point he kept reiterating over and over again was that regionally, you guys need to be on the same page. People need to join together and kind of advocate in groups regionally for projects and have sort of a unified voice. So I think, the discussion that Stacy was talking about and what we have going forward makes it even more important with all this money on the table. That was a big takeaway, is just regionally coming together, being on the same page, advocating with a single voice. And then second was the pretty stark difference between the needs of the big counties versus the medium, or the big cities versus the medium-sized cities versus the small cities. Really different needs. So the things I said, as the mayor and Merced, are so different than the needs of Dos Palos or other places too. So it just, being able to, one, speak with a unified voice, and two, being able potentially to address the needs of all the different jurisdictions, which can be very unique. So those are kind of the two big takeaways for me. And three, there's a lot of money out there, and it's up to us really to go and fight for it and be smart and advocate for it. So with opportunity comes all that responsibility. All right. Shoot. Not me. Okay, takes us to adjournment. Meeting is adjourned unless anybody wants to stick around.